I thought I found a Thomasville faux bamboo Allegro dresser. Hi, I'm Lisa with Ivy Lane Home, and I didn't find a Thomasville Allegro dresser. Here's the story. My friend Tabitha, she sent me a listing for a faux bamboo, which she knows I love, and it was $50. And I was like, all right. So I contact the lady right away, message her, we get, coordinate pickup. Went and picked it up, and as soon as I pulled out the drawers, no dovetails, no maker's mark. It is a faux bamboo, but no Thomasville. But it is a faux bamboo, and they're still very highly sought after. This particular one looks more like they tried to make it look more in the farmhouse type of feel, but really faux bamboo is more like the Grand Millennial, Palm Beach kind of vibe. And so they look really great painted out, but it's definitely more cleaner, brighter colors and not farmhousey. So it's still a great flip. I've done ones that don't have a maker's mark, and they still sold for like $900. So I'm sure I can still salvage it. I won't get as much as if it was a Thomasville, but it still will be a good flip. So let's go. So here it is in all of its yellow glory. You can see on the top that they tried to do some type of a faux wood, kind of a barn wood look to it, and I'm pretty sure it's a composite top. I don't even think it's real wood. So if I look at the back, I'm pretty sure it's just composite. So that's just a faux wood look. These look great painted completely out, including the top. So this will all be painted. But you can see I have some black hardware here. I don't know if that's original or not. You can see this drawer falls right out. I am missing, this is the only drawer that's missing the guide on it, so I'll have to fix that one. You can see, I think it was turquoise also at some point. She said in the ad that this is chalk paint, which is, yikes. If you've ever stripped chalk paint, it's interesting. So I've used chalk paint. I'm not opposed to it. It has its, purposes, but overall I don't use it anymore. So I don't really like the chalky feel of it. I always have to, put some type of a polyurethane on it. So I don't know. I'm gonna probably have to sand quite a bit of it down because I got a lot of texture. You can see there, in order to get a really nice paint job, a lot of this is gonna have to be sanded down. I'm hoping I don't have to strip it because that would just take a lot more time. So overall though, good dresser, really beautiful clean lines. Probably spray out the hardware. Don't know if I'm going to accent the moldings or not. We'll see, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a good flip. So let's go.
I'm going to start by sanding the top. I don't know what's underneath here. I'm going to paint it anyway. So I'm just going to sand it. Got to make it really smooth so I have a really nice adhesion when I go to prime and paint it. Now there was a lot of texture on the side because this was chalk paint. Chalk paint invariably, especially if you're using a brush, it's just going to have texture. And so I don't want texture in my paint. So I literally spent an entire day on prep for this particular one.
I have a Ryobi mouse sander, and I found a great set on Amazon that is a compatible set for my Ryobi. So it comes with, it's a huge pack. It comes with like 70 different pads, and they go all the way from a really coarse grit of 40 all the way up to 320. So it has 10 in each specific grit. So it's going to be great, and I'm going to helps me to get into some of these detailed areas that are very difficult for me to get with my orbital. So I'll have a link below if you want to check it out, but I've been enjoying it.
So these work out really great. You can tell I need to get into little corners on this. And so my Ryobi is great for getting into those little corners. You can see on there that it was painted turquoise as well. So I don't know if the turquoise or if the turquoise was throughout the whole thing. So I don't know if it was initially painted turquoise and then they painted the yellow over it. But there was just a lot going on this piece. And so in order for me to get a really nice paint job, I don't have to strip it, but I do need to make sure that it's really smooth. And so I'm trying to get some of the extra paint that's in areas I don't want it. I am trying to get that off. So sometimes I'll try to sand it off first, and then if that doesn't work, I'll come back with some stronger chemicals. I'm using these little sanding contours. They're great for getting into edges, and so I'll have them linked down in the description, but they're great. They're great for just getting into different types of profiles. And then sometimes I just wrap my sandpaper around a Bondo spreader, and that really helps me get into those corners. There was paint on the whole drawer, the back side, the underside. It was just a lot. So I'm having to just make sure I can go through the whole thing and try to get as much of that paint off as possible. If I can't get it off, then I'll just paint over it. Little squishy interface that I have that goes on my Festool, and it's helpful to get into areas that are curved. And so on the sides, I needed to be able to have an area where I could kind of match the profiles, especially there you can see on the rails and then also on the sides. Helps get into some of the curved areas. I only have a couple areas that I need to apply a little bit of wood putty to. I had some gouges. And so after that, I'll get my drawers prepped. I'm going to use some painter's tape on the side, and then I'll cover all of the holes, the hardware holes, with tape so that I don't have any kind of overspray. I'm going to tape over these areas, but the areas on the other side of the tape, I'm trying to get off the overspray. So I like to start out with rubbing alcohol first, and if that doesn't work, I'll go a little bit stronger with some acetone. Again, I'm going to tape some of this off and paint it, but I don't want to have to paint too much. Now that my prep is done, I'm ready for primer. I'm using Ben's 123 Wider Base Primer. I'm using my Erlex 5700, and so you can see I have my drawers out. I'm using a piece of cardboard that goes underneath the lip so I don't have to tape off the entire drawer. It's a great little hack and it works pretty good. Sometimes I still have overspray, but I can come back with either acetone or the rubbing alcohol to get that off. You can see I'm using an offset pattern just on those detailed areas. It really gets in to those areas really well if you have some fine details. And then I'll come back with either my horizontal or my vertical and get the rest of the drawer. I did have some areas I felt like they needed to have some caulking. So I'm just going to use this, put a nice little bead on there, smooth it out with my finger, come back and wipe off any excess. And then this is paintable caulk, so it dries within 30 minutes. So I'll come back and catch it on my next round of priming. So I gave it a scuff sand and did any additional fill, and I did a second coat of primer. For the interior, I like to turn the pressure down a little bit so I don't have as much overspray. That way it's just not going everywhere. It's just a little bit more of a controlled pattern. On the next section, I used the offset pattern and it really blasted out the paint. You have to be really careful. I had some drips I had to go back and correct. Well, I was trying to move a drawer and I tripped over my sprayer, fell on the drawer and on my knee and messed up my freshly painted drawer. So I'm going to have to sand this back again now that it's dried and smooth it out and do another coat on this little area so I have a nice undercoat when I go to paint it. So sometimes things happen, but such is life. Still have some areas that you can see in the light. Oops, you can see right there I have some areas
that if I were to paint that, it would, you'd see it. You see that? So I'm going to fill those areas in because that'll give me a really wonderful paint job. I want it to be as smooth as possible because paint just sometimes accentuates your problems. So I'm using this Bond Cart wood putty. Got this recently, they sent it to me, and I really like it. It's kind of the consistency almost of like a caulk. You can color it, but obviously I'm painting, so I'm not coloring it. But they said on the package you could color it with like powders. So, which I don't have powders, but I'm just going to fill some of these areas in. Again, I really want as smooth a finish as possible. So this says a long dry time of like 6 hours, but I've been using it the last couple weeks and it dries really fast. So maybe it's certain applications with certain humidity levels or whatever, but I like it. It's working really good. So I've got this stain on here. It's in the perfect outline of something that was sat on there. I don't know if that was from me or the previous owner, but the weird thing is I have shellacked it and it keeps coming through. So I'm going to sand it back again, re-shellac it, and then see if I can block it. Actually, I have some of this Sherwin-Williams Pro Block, so I'm going to try it. See if that works.
I have a drawer guide that I need to replace, so honestly it's just easier to take the back off when you're working with drawer guides. So I'm just going to remove the back. It's pretty beat up anyway and it has a big hole in the middle, so I'm going to cut a new one. It'll be nice and fresh when I'm done with it. But for now I need to access that top right drawer guide area, and I'm going to take out the old and put a new one on. So this area is really difficult to get with a traditional screwdriver. So I found some flexible drill bits on Amazon, and they have ones that are the flexible ones, and then they have one that you can turn it into a 90-degree drill. So I'm going to try the flexible one first. Just going to put my drill bit on, attach it to my drill, and angle it to try to get that screw out. So you have to kind of hold it tight so it doesn't get away from you, but you can see it came out and it worked really good. So I got the back one out. I'm going to do the same for the front and get it out. Again, you have to be kind of careful because it kind of will twist on you, but as long as you hold it, it'll come out really well. I found some drawer guides that have pre-drilled holes, which is great because they're also countersunk. So I'm going to drill a little bit of a tiny little pilot hole, and now I'm going to try the 90-degree attachment and see if I can get this screwed back in. You can see you got to kind of hold it, but it works really good and helps get into really tight areas. So this will definitely be staying in my toolbox. Now for the drawer guide that goes along the back, I'm going to take out the old part, and then I'll need to trim the new one a little bit because it's too long. It hangs over the door too much. So I'm just going to put it in there, draw a little line, use my miter saw, and trim it. So the fit's really good. I'll need to do a dry fit though and make sure that it's looking good. And then I'm going to put a line on each side of the drawer because I want to make sure that when I glue it down that it's glued exactly where I need it to be. I'm using some CA glue with this is like a super glue, and then you use that on one side and then use an activator on the other. There's nowhere for me to be able to screw this in, so I'm just going to use glue, and this is going to be great. All you have to do is put one on one side, one on the other, press it down, hold it for a few seconds, and it's a super tight bond. After another scuff sand and tacking it off, I'm ready for my first coat of paint. So after much deliberation, I had polls going on both YouTube and on Instagram. And funny thing is most people said the choices were blue, white, black, or like a taupey pink. And on YouTube, most people voted for white. But I got an impassioned plea from Margot that said, no white. Please, I am so tired of white furniture. And then I had people that were suggesting green, inky green, and which would be beautiful, like a jade green. But then I was like, you're confusing me. So that wasn't even a choice. It was tied on Instagram. It was tied between a light blue and a black. So one of my local friends, she had just painted two things black, and she's like, girl, you just need to paint them black. She said, I had 50 messages. I could have sold my pieces over and over. And so although I was thinking more pastels, because, you know, faux bamboo is very grand millennial, Palm Beach, it's also chinoiserie. And so chinoiserie is more of that Asian feel where you have the reds and the blacks. Actually, somebody also recommended I could paint it red for a real chinoiserie look. But I've actually never done a red dresser. So I decided to go with black. And so a little different. I was going to go light, but man, it is, after the first coat, I can tell it was the right decision because it went from farmhouse to chic. I'm already loving this look. I like to always make sure I turn my dresser over because it's amazing what you miss when you don't turn it over. So I missed a huge spot on the underside, and you can see on the sides there, I missed the undersides of the bamboo portion too. So I like to tip it over and make sure I catch everything. So for my hardware, I'm just going to give it a good clean and then I'm going to spray it. I like to put in baking soda, boiling water, and then some white vinegar, and then I'll just let it set. I am going to go ahead and do a second coat on the interior because I had missed some spots. And then while I had it, I decided I'm going to give it one more coat on the top and on the side. So I ended up doing a full 3 coats on the top and the sides, and then I did 2 coats on the drawers. 2 was plenty for them, but I decided one more coat on the top because I had to ended up doing one more fill. But that area that I did the blocking on, it worked out great. It didn't come through again. Now when I was cleaning my hardware, I was just going to give it a nice scrub, but what I found was the black was coming off. And so I was like, okay, this isn't black. I thought it was just a black hardware because it was on the back and on the front. But come to find out, it was actually black paint. And they had painted both the top and the bottom. And so I put it in an acetone bath, and because I thought, okay, well, that's going to take a long time. So I got the acetone bath, and then the paint just came right off. Now, I still have to polish them. It's kind of a little wrinkle. You could call it a happy surprise, I guess. I mean, it caused more work, but it was still worth it, I think, because they were brass. And so I was going to do like a gold and then maybe like a distressing, but to find original brass hardware underneath black paint, that's pretty great. So I'll clean all the paint off and then I'll have to come back and do a full polish on them. I have a soft wire brush that I'm using to really try to get some of that tarnish off. So I'll use the brush. I'm using a new to me brass polish. This is working really good for me. And so I apply that, use the brush, then I come back with a fine steel wool and get off as much as I can. And then I'll rinse it off with some soap and water and see what it looks like. So that turned out really good. I'm loving that. Has a bit of a patina, but I'm liking it. So the final step will be I'm going to seal it with some lacquer for brass by Mohawk. And this is just going to slow down the tarnish process and just keep it a little bit shinier for a little bit longer. Last step is I'm ready to work on the drawers. I found some really beautiful paper that I think is going to look great with this set. You can see I had some overspray on the drawers, so I probably should have just taped them off completely, but I find that rubbing alcohol does a great job of getting any overspray off without damaging the surface underneath. So sometimes, like this is not, some of the components on this drawer are not real wood. So if I had used acetone, it would have eaten away at the faux finish, because it's like a faux finish over like a composite material. So that's where that rubbing alcohol is fabulous, because it doesn't eat away at the finish. I'm just going to cut it to size, push it into the corners, use a Bondo spreader, a wallpaper scraper, and then I'll just trim it with my X-Acto knife. Well, let's look back at the before on this one. It was a fun piece. I love faux bamboo. This one, I wasn't opposed to the style. I just felt that this particular farmhouse look probably wasn't as appropriate with the bamboo style. And so I think by trying to kind of reinvent it and maybe to make it look a little bit more like that, chinoiserie look, I did have the one drawer that guide that I needed to have replaced. Obviously, all that original hardware, I didn't know the original brass hardware was hiding underneath all that black paint. But what a happy little moment there that was. But it was a lot of work, If you remember on the sides there, I had so much texture that I had to end up sanding down. It took me a full day of prep. But it was a lot of work. But after all of that and giving it a fabulous new paint job, here is the finished product. It's pretty sleek, isn't it? I mean, wow. I went from farmhouse to, uptown. It's really classy. My husband came home and saw it today and he's like, wow, that's nice. I was like, I know, they all look really good in my dining room. But man, can you believe that hardware was hiding underneath the black paint? It retains just a little bit of the original patina, which I love because I really didn't want something too bright brass. I wanted something with just a little bit of age to it. And aren't those drawer liners beautiful? That's not real wood on the doors or on the drawers. And so it was appropriate to go ahead. It had some marring on a few of the drawers. So it was appropriate to go ahead and line them. And I think that lining really works for this Tricorn Black. So there's a close-up of the hardware. Man, I'm loving it. I just think it looks amazing. And I like the texture. It had that texture on the top 3 drawers. I really like that. I think it looks really good. Enjoy some of these videos and we'll come back at the end. So can you believe that's the same top? It went from barnwood to beautiful, smooth black. It's gorgeous. I love it. I don't know if you like it, but I think it's pretty classy and very sleek. So what other colors do you think I should have tried? Would you like to have seen an inky jade green? I think that would have been beautiful. I was also thinking like a ruby would be really pretty too. So I don't know. You'll have to tell me. I'm sure I'll come across this again. So you have to tell me in the comments what you think I should paint next. And how much should I list it for? Tell me in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.